And sitting nice and tall, just close the eyes. Allow the body to relax. Allow the mind to soften. Allow the heart to open. And simply allow yourself to arrive in this moment. Noticing that the breath is moving in and out with each breath that you take. The inhale is the gift from the divine. The exhale is the expression of gratitude for that gift. And so taking a few breaths here, just feeling that exchange, that as you breathe in, you are receiving, and as you breathe out, you are expressing. And then notice that as you're sitting here, there is this beautiful balance within the body. It automatically happens to some degree. There is a softness, a relaxation, a gentleness, but there's also a power, a strength, and a discipline. And without the appropriate balance of both sides of that coin, we end up with an extreme, either too much relaxation into laziness or too much discipline into rigidness. And in yoga, we explore tapas, which is the discipline. And so scanning the body from head to toe, just noticing in this moment the quality of the discipline that you are experiencing. Can you sense that it does not have rigid edges, or that it does? Is it a compassionate discipline or a cold, hard discipline? Is it flexible or is it rigid? And what is your reaction and response to your inner discipline? Does it cause you to smile or to cringe? And then just sending a request, perhaps, out to the universe, to the Mother, to the Father, to the divinity that exists, to support us in experiencing and expressing the most healthy discipline possible, the one that brings us to a greater balance, a greater experience of life, love, happiness, peace, and joy, and to avoid the extremes, whether they be in our discipline or anything else. Placing the right hand on the heart and the left hand over the right. And together we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. And bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging all that is. And draw the face to center. Just keep the hands on the heart for a minute. And see if you can tune into your heartbeat. Can you feel that pulse in the chest, the pulsation of the heart? Most of us would say that's a disciplined heart. Yes? It's consistent. It keeps the same basic rhythm. It doesn't let you down. It goes on and on and on. never gets too tired, just continues. But yet, I think everybody here would also agree that that heart is also the home of love. It is the home of compassion. It is the seat of our grace, and it is the space in which the divinity resides within us. And so the compassion and the discipline go hand in hand. And if the discipline becomes too harsh in the heart, what happens to it? Anybody know? What was that? You could have hardening of the artery, right? Something like that. Maybe you could have rapid heartbeat. You could have interaction between the nervous system and the heart that causes fibrillations. Yeah, so too much, right? Too much. Too intense. And then what happens to the heart if there's not enough, compassion? Or rather, let me put it this way, if there's too much compassion that goes toward pity, then what happens to the heart? If there's too much compassion that goes toward being misunderstood and then becomes pity, what do you think happens to the heart then? It gets heavy. Yeah, it gets heavy. Yeah. And that affects the rest of the body. How? The rest of the body gets heavy. The rest of the body gets lethargic. It gets disinterested, depressed, right? So within the heart, we can see specifically the necessity of the relationship between discipline and compassion. The discipline for the continuity must be there, but the compassion must also be there. Otherwise, the discipline becomes something that is rigid and harmful. But the compassion must also be an honest compassion. It should not be pity. Compassion and pity are not the same thing. Pity is, I feel sorry for you. And that doesn't really serve anything. Compassion is, I recognize your suffering because I suffer too. So I'm going to hold so much space for you and send you so many prayers and intentions for healing simply because, I don't want to see you suffer. But I also understand that you have to be the one to control what needs to be controlled through your own discipline. So the heart is a great example of the discipline, the compassion, the two sides of that particular coin. And discipline is a word in our community nowadays which isn't really looked upon very nicely. People hear the word discipline and they kind of go, they cringe. They're like, I don't want to be disciplined. I want to be free. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I want to float. And that's beautiful. So float. But if you float without discipline, where will you end up? Floating away. Bye. Floating away, far, far away. So even in your freedom, there must be discipline. Think about water. Water is very powerful, is it not? Yeah. It's very powerful. It's like freedom. Freedom is very powerful. We build dams to contain water. We give water a boundary in order to make the water what we consider useful. Not like it wasn't already useful, you know what I'm saying. But this is the mentality we have, that it'll be more useful. So we give it a boundary. What happens when the dam breaks? Look at what happened in the Midwest, right? Throughout all the states of the Midwest, all the floods that are out there right now, because the water has no boundary. Water is like freedom. What happens when your freedom has no boundary? It's destructive. But what happens when your freedom has a boundary, a compassionately disciplined boundary? Then it's useful. Then it's expressive. Then it's something that you can really spend time with and appreciate and expand upon. But when freedom doesn't have a boundary, it's rushing water. And rushing water will pretty much harm anything in its path and everything in its path. So if we're not mindful, our freedom and our expression of our freedom, if we think that our freedom should be boundless in regard to, I don't care what you think, I don't care what you say, I don't care, then what our freedom actually is a hammer that is hammering everybody that it comes into contact with. Does that make sense? But if our freedom has a healthy boundary to it, if our freedom has a healthy boundary in that we recognize what causes harm and what doesn't cause harm, and we exercise our freedom through our choice of not harming, then our freedom has a healing component to it. And rather than being a hammer, it becomes an elixir. It becomes a curative. Not only to self, but to every single other person that we interact with. To the world in general. But if you take that freedom and you put a cold, hard boundary to it, you say, no. Then that freedom will feel stifled. And then it will want to burst out like the water wants to burst out of the dam. So we must be really mindful about how we are using discipline, but that we are in fact using it. Many times today people feel that their voices have been shut down. And they're probably very correct about that. I know in my life I've had my voice shut down before, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience at all. And I can remember in my younger days, my reaction to that would be to yell louder. And then they'd shut me down, and I'd yell louder, and then I'd feel shut down, and then I'd yell louder. And I just got a sore throat. Because there was this force in the yelling, but there was no compassion. And when you have some kind of force, which we could consider discipline a force, when you have some force, but there is no compassion, then the force is harmful. You end up with a sore throat from yelling. Somebody listen to me. Somebody hear what I'm saying. But if we feel that we have been shut down, and instead of screaming, we stand up and we integrate body, mind, and spirit. And we make sure that that body, mind, and spirit is integrated upon a foundation of compassion. Then we can speak clearly and calmly. And in speaking clearly and calmly, we make our point to those who are willing to hear it. And eventually enough people come together who are willing to hear it, that it kind of undoes what the others were doing. It overwhelms it. And not with anger, but with compassion. Not with hate, but with a sense of love. Not with, vengeance, but with a sense of necessity of change. So that's a lot for the first few minutes. The whole point of it is to say, discipline is not something for you or I to be afraid of. It is actually a necessity in our life if we are going to choose to be happy, to be healthy, to be free. We must be disciplined. And then we need to be mindful that our discipline is not a rigid discipline. It's not a discipline that shuts out potential. It is a discipline that invites potential in. It's a discipline that is willing to grow and breathe and change and be. But always learning along the way through compassionate awareness what is harmful and what is not harmful. And more often than not, choosing what is not harmful. So that in that choice, our freedom grows even more. Because when you and you all know this because just like me, you've experienced this, that when you've made the right decision, you feel free, unburdened. But when you have made an incorrect decision, you feel heavy, lethargic, depressed, angry, upset in some way, shape, or form. And then when we make the wrong decision, what do? We put the discipline in place in a rigid way. And we say, I'm never going to do that again. How could I have done that? I'm so stupid. I'm so this. I'm so that. And that lasts for a cold, hard 5 minutes. Because there was no compassion. But when we make a choice based in non-harming, a burden is lifted off of our shoulders and away from our heart. And we get a taste of what ultimate freedom really is. And in that moment, there's a part of ourselves that decides, I am going to make this choice again. Because this is freaking awesome. Look at that. I can make a good choice and I don't have to feel bad about it. I don't have to kick myself over it. I don't have to condemn myself. I don't have to make promises to myself that I know I'm not going to keep. You don't have to make promises to yourself that you know you're not going to keep. Instead, make promises to yourself that you know you are. Have the discipline of self-truthfulness, being truthful to self. When you make yourself a promise, so like, okay, I know I'm never going to give up chocolate cake completely. I may go for periods of time without it, but I'm sorry. I really like chocolate cake, especially a good vegan, gluten-free chocolate cake. I'm done for. I've been very, very reasonable lately with myself, and I haven't been having any because I've been watching a little bit of what I'm eating. But when the day comes that I feel that it sits right with my body, I am going to have that piece of chocolate cake. So I'm not going to make myself a promise to never have chocolate cake again. Instead, I'm going to say to myself, just for today, just for this morning, just for right now, I'm going to put this off to the side until I can sense in my body that it's appropriate. And then I will allow myself. Yeah. So the discipline there is in the honesty. The discipline there is in the honesty. And not saying, I'm never going to eat chocolate cake again, ever. Just like right now I'm not drinking coffee. You know that is not going to last forever. I am too much of a coffee lover. Coffee and chocolate cake together, totally done for. Yeah. But right now, it wasn't serving me well. So I made the decision to put it to the side until a point in time where I feel my body can tolerate it. And then maybe I'll pick it back up again. And because I didn't make myself the promise that I will never do it again, when the day comes that I do pick it up, I won't have to hate myself over it. I'll be able to enjoy it and then put it down again as I need to. Now, there are some things that we do need to be pretty hard disciplined with. But even hard discipline is not cold discipline. It's clear, you know? It's clear. Like if your tendency is to, use abusive language and you somehow derive a satisfaction from seeing people harmed, or putting them in their place, then there is a hard discipline that you need to come into with regard to your mouth. You need to let the top lip meet the bottom lip and knock it off, because that's the truth. The truth is, if the words coming out of the mouth are harmful, then you need to close the mouth. And then you sit with that for a while, which is completely uncomfortable. You sit with it for a while until you stop the harmful language. And it seems harmful to yourself. It's like, but I feel like I have to express myself. No, actually, you just want to. You don't need to. You want to. Because there is a part inside of us that feels angry, let down, short-sighted, squashed. And we don't know what to do with that because we haven't cultivated a disciplined practice wherein we can take those feelings safely and work with them. Most people have not cultivated that. So instead, when they feel threatened, they scream. And they typically will scream until they get a sore throat. Instead of moving back, paying attention to what's actually happening, noticing the sensations that are moving through the body, and then, even if you need to, removing yourself from the situation so you have time to sit with it and define a response that is not harmful to the other person, no matter how much you want it to be. That is not harmful to them, but that stands your ground compassionately, with discipline, and appropriately, so that you are holding your own boundary in place. See what I'm saying? Yeah, does that make sense for everybody? Yeah. Where else is there discipline in life? What do you think, Alicia?
Your practice, your yoga practice.
Your yoga practice, totally. Absolutely. So your mindfulness practice, whether it's any of the techniques of yoga, it could be Tai Chi or karate. You know, how do people get to a black belt in karate? They don't get there because they don't practice. You know, how do musicians become masterful musicians? Not because they don't practice. Yeah, the woman who was singing in that video you sent me, Michelle, beautiful voice, and those musicians behind her. Wow, how did they do that? Because they never met before and never played together before.
Some of them never met.
I know, but they have practiced so much that they can do that. That's called mastery. That is skill, where they have spent so much time practicing that when they do encounter another musician who has also practiced, then they just merge together like Shiva and Shakti, and whatever comes out is beautiful. But when you have person number one who rarely practices and person number two who rarely practices as musicians, and they come together for the first time, they don't have enough skill to be able to play off of each other. They don't have enough skill to hear the next note before it's even played. They don't have enough internal awareness or external awareness in order to be able to pull that off with a good amount of harmony. So it becomes awkward. The same thing in our yoga practice. You know, we come onto the mat, and yes, it's hard and it's difficult, and you know what? Every day there are other things you could be doing. You could be answering the phone, you could be scrolling through Facebook, you could be watching General Hospital, whatever it happens to be. You know, you could be doing something else. But what's going to pay you back more? This is where the honesty discipline comes in. What's going to pay you back more? Scrolling Facebook or practicing your practice? Sitting down for another biscuit and tea or doing your practice? Your practice is going to benefit you more because your practice is going to allow you to become stable within yourself, strong within yourself, dedicated within yourself, disciplined within yourself, compassionate within yourself, love within yourself, and connected within and beyond yourself. And Facebook won't do that for you. Tea and biscuits won't do that for you. Fidgeting won't do that for you. Fidgeting is, I don't want to be connected. I don't want to be connected. Facebook is also, I don't want to be connected. May not have started off that way. But now, you know, why would you want to be on? I mean, I have, you know, for the foundation I'm on there. But I really don't like being on there. And I keep talking to Casey and keep kind of brainstorming about how do we do this without Facebook? Like, how do we get the word out without Facebook? I would love that. And then every once in a while, I've thrown it out there and been like, I'm going to go on hiatus for a while. And I get like all these emails. No, Sudha, don't do that. I'm like, just come to the ashram. Just be here in person and connect. You know? That's not connection. That's distraction. Being on there. Yeah. But it takes discipline to come off. And that's an addiction. Facebook is an addiction. The blinking lights on the computer, playing games with your mind, with your eyes and the receptors in your eyes. The idea that someone liked you, they did a psychological study on that. Wow. They said that someone liking your post on Facebook is like such a powerful influencer. It's like a drug. So if you can get just one more like, just 10 more likes. If I could just get 1,500 likes, I'll win this contest. And people know this and they play on it. Like people selling stuff and whatnot. So they put this thing out. It's, I think it's in Thailand or maybe it's in Bali. And it's this like eco retreat center. And they sent me a private message. And they said, if you like our page, you'll be in the running to win a 10-day, all expenses paid retreat to our place in Bali, including airfare for 4 people. I thought, good scheme. 72,000 likes so far. You know, their psychology is way up here, right? They're riding such a high right now. 72,000 likes that people are like, I gotta like this, you gotta like this, we all gotta like this, and then the 4 of us will go together. Likes on Facebook are addictive. Yeah. Which makes Facebook addictive. Just as addictive as the likes on Facebook are the dislikes on Facebook. The fact that somebody can say one thing like, hello, and it can be so, I don't even know what. It causes people to become so harmful. You know, they see somebody post something that they don't like. You know, there was a time, now mind you, this is not a new thing. This political intolerance in this country is not new. There has been political intolerance in this country since day one. This country was built on political intolerance. But there are times when we are more tolerant of each other. And you can sit there and talk about one thing, and I could sit there and talk about the opposite side, and we're good with it, you know? But Facebook makes it really easy to be attacking. It makes it very easy to become an anonymous violent person. So that whatever aggressions we feel within ourselves that we have not used our practice to resolve, Facebook becomes an open field for them to play themselves out in all kinds of harmful ways. Because you don't have to face the person to say what you're going to say. You don't have to look in their eyes. All you have to do is write a bunch of nonsensical words down that are targeting their heart and push send. There is no discipline there. That is a heart that is to the pity side. You would think that that was a heart that was to the rigid side, but it's not. That is a heart that is to the side of pity. It is a heart that is depressed. It is a heart that is, just so lethargic that it does not even wish to have a face-to-face interaction. It just wishes to take the easy way and to express its own aggression in a way that is not only harmful to others, but consistently harmful to oneself. What else is discipline? Michelle?
The garden.
The garden is discipline. It is, isn't it? It is. The garden is never-ending discipline. Yes, it is.
It's a discipline of paying attention and the practice that comes with paying attention.
Yeah.
So that you know what may be happening when you see something happening.
Absolutely.
Not know what's happening.
It's
prioritizing.
Definitely the discipline of prioritizing. That's big.
yeah.
Big, big.
And also being okay if certain plants don't come off.
Letting go.
Letting go.
Of not
Yeah.
letting go of the expectations. Oh, so much.
Yeah, so the garden, letting go of expectations, being okay with the bugs, you know. Now, if you go out to the garden with a cold, hard discipline, where the garden has to be a certain way, and you start, behaving, interacting with the plants in that, with that energy, those poor little plants, they're not going to thrive. Not really, not energetically. They may get real big and bushy and robust on the outside, but what's happening to their essence, which is like 80% water for most of them, that your energy and your words and your intentions, if they're on the harder side of discipline, can actually be harmful and reduce the nutrition of the plants that you're growing. And we know that it can change the water molecules, the shape of the crystallization of those. So we know that it can change the quality of the molecules to some degree because we know the water experiments that happened. So it's important that when you're gardening, that your discipline includes taking your aggression elsewhere and not putting it into the plants. And instead infusing them with what? Love, compassion, joy. The experience of being outside on a beautiful day or a rainy day or a chilly day or a hot day. And bearing that for the sake of love. What was that?
That's a big part of discipline.
That's a big part of discipline.
Yeah. Or watering when it needs to be watered.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And then look at your relationships like that, right? Because your relationships are a garden. Oh. That was a face worth 1,000 words. Yeah. That was a good face. Yeah, your relationships are a garden. Over here, you're growing a relationship with this one. You're growing a relationship with that one. You're growing a relationship with this one. What's the difference? There isn't any. So what will you bring to that garden? The garden of your relationships? Will you bring, like a cold, hard discipline about the way this relationship has to be? Or will there be, less aggression and more doing the necessary work, bless you, that has to be done? Now, sometimes the garden doesn't work. Sometimes it just doesn't. The environment is an influence you can't control. The bugs are an influence that are really hard to control, especially if you're not using pesticides. Just seasonal things are just sometimes hard to control. And you can't do anything about that. And so maybe there are times where you have to walk away from the idea that the asparagus is going to grow.
It's going to grow.
Oh, no, it's going to grow. I'm just using it as an example. It's going to grow. But let's just say, how do you walk away from that? Do you walk away, like angry, cursing the asparagus? Or do you just recognize that it's not time right now? And in discipline, maintaining your practice with compassionate discipline, holding a space of equanimity and resolve, understanding that things don't always turn out the way we want them to. But that doesn't mean there isn't a God. That doesn't mean there isn't a goddess. That doesn't mean there isn't grace. That doesn't mean that there isn't something else there valuable, just as valuable as what you consider to be a valuable outcome. Maybe the outcome that's going to happen is even more valuable to you on your spiritual path and in your life. It's so amazing, So many people that I've spoken with who were going through a life crisis because they were having financial difficulties and maybe they had to close a business or they were going to, lose their home or something like that. And they would come in and we would, have a conversation. And I would suggest to them, well, there are emotions that need to be processed with regard to this situation always. Discipline is also not stuffing it. Discipline is the strength and the courage to face what needs to be faced. Discipline is the strength and the courage to face what needs to be faced. And to do the work that needs to be done. And to acknowledge where there has been mistake or where there has not been mistake. To own up to that. And to make appropriate changes as you can. But there is also something about letting things go. And letting things go is also a discipline. It is an acknowledgement that it's not time right now for this to be. And that maybe the falling away of this is representing the beginning of something else. Not maybe, absolutely, in every situation without exception. That if one thing ends, it is making space for something else to begin. And this is the crux of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Durga Kali. This is the crux of the Trideva and the Tridevi, the three gods and the three goddesses that are in many schools considered primary in yoga. Because one is the creator, one is the maintainer, and one is the destroyer. And people hear destroyer. I don't want things to be destroyed. Well, let's just say that nobody ever died anymore. Just imagine that. Nobody ever died anymore. No animal, no tree, no human. How long could we live here? A day. Maybe. Yeah. And then this earth would be so overwhelmed that it would not be able to tolerate the burden any longer. So for this world to continue, for this planet to continue, for us as a species to continue, there must be death. And there must be birth. So many of these people who have come to talk to me came back to me at a later point in time, and the conversations were obviously much longer than that, and said, oh my gosh, Sudha, I had no idea, like this one thing that fell away and I was so worried about it. And just this week alone, I got these other 3 offers that I'm now in a place that I can say, let me think about it. Maybe this will work for me. They let their house go after the storm that happened in Jersey years ago, only to relocate to a place where they felt so much happier. I mean, they were heartbroken over the loss of their home to the storm, but in the long run, they either ended up rebuilding in a different way that was more storm appropriate. What is storm appropriate? I mean, FEMA has its ideas. Or they moved someplace else where they ended up really loving the place that they found themselves in. And they probably would have never left had the storm not happened. So discipline is also looking at the situation that we find ourselves in and looking beyond our expectations and our wants of that situation and looking into the potential that it holds. The potential that it holds. And not allowing fear to be the driving force. Discipline goes hand in hand with courage. Discipline goes hand in hand with bravery. Discipline goes hand in hand with awareness. If you're not aware and mindful, then your discipline may very well become lethargic or cold. But if you are aware and mindful, then you are more likely to be able to maintain a discipline that is compassionate and purposeful. We've all seen through the history of the world what happens when discipline gets out of control. We end up with wars over nothing. We end up with, corporate exploitation. We end up with all kinds of things happening in the world, crooked politicians, all kinds of things. And these are not new things. These are things that are part of the history of humanity. They have been here since day one, in some way, shape, or another. So discipline is everywhere. So does that mean that we should spend 24/7 constantly contemplating on how should I be in a disciplined way with this? If that's your practice, yes, absolutely, sure. To look at a situation, your friend is calling, and every time that friend calls you, you know that you're going to be on the phone for 2 hours, and you know that by the time you get off the phone, that you're feeling pretty cruddy. So, yes, be disciplined. Either if you pick up the phone, how long you're going to stay on the conversation, or what boundaries you're going to set in that relationship, or the fact that you're not going to answer the phone. Be disciplined. Look at the discipline and recognize it as something healthy for you. You go to work and, you're always letting your coworker offload on you, their work. You need to look at that situation and ask yourself, where is the discipline here? Not the cold discipline of do your own freaking work. Not that. No. The discipline of, in order for me to do the best job possible, this position has been structured a certain way. I cannot do my job and your job. I can only do my job. You will need to do your job. And if you are unhappy with your job, then you will need to go and talk to the person in charge. Discipline. A discipline of doing your job to the best of your ability, by not weakening your efforts by allowing someone else to dump on you. Does that make sense? Yeah. Discipline in food. Discipline in food. Alejandro knows all about discipline in food, except when it comes to raisins. Alejandro does intermittent fasting. That's a very disciplined practice. Very disciplined practice. You can't go at that halfway. You either do it or you don't do it, right? Yeah. When you look at your meal, on your plate, grace is your discipline. To have gratitude before you eat it. Mindfulness could be a discipline. To be mindful while you're eating it. And then your cleanup could be disciplined. There's no place in your life discipline doesn't work. It works everywhere. The only time it doesn't work is if it's a lazy discipline or if it is a cold, hard, harsh discipline. Then it doesn't work very well. But if it is compassionate discipline, as the Buddha said, if it is the middle road discipline where you're present to it with a compassionate heart, not making excuses for oneself, but simply recognizing what the benefits and what the detriments are, and then behaving in a way that is optimal for your benefit, spiritually speaking, and optimal for the benefit of all those around you, spiritually speaking, then that is the most useful discipline there is. And that's called abiding in your Dharma. Abiding in your Dharma. Committing to your duty in this life. Dharma means duty. It also has an implication of being with the natural flow of things. Being with the natural ethic of the universe. And to be with that natural ethic instead of what our ego wants requires discipline. So I'll read to you briefly before we take some questions or comments. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Patanjali is oftentimes called the father of yoga, not because he created it, he did not. Shiva is the lord of yoga. But because he was one of the first ones to actually write it down into a text that people could understand. And he did this several thousand years ago. He did this somewhere around the time between, say, 2000 BC and 500 BC. So before the time of Christ, he wrote this down. Tapaha swadhyaya ishvara pranidhana ni kriya yogaha. A burning zeal in your practice Self-study and study of scriptures and surrender to the divine are acts of yoga. Tapas is the blazing desire to burn away the impurities of the body, the senses, and the mind. Svadhyaya is the repetition of sacred mantras and the study of spiritual sacred texts in order to comprehend one's own self. Ishvara pranidhana is surrender of one's body, mind, and soul to God or goddess or both through love for that. And these three together are called Kriya Yoga. And Kriya Yoga is the path to connection, to oneness, and to healing. The second sutra, where he discusses tapas. Kaya indriya siddhi asudhi kshayat tapasaha. Self-discipline, tapas, burns away impurities and kindles the sparks of divinity. It destroys all impurities, perfecting the body, mind, and senses so that consciousness functions freely and attains divinity. So tapas is necessary. Discipline is necessary for the experience of freedom within the yoga tradition. To have no discipline is not to be free. To have no discipline is to have no discipline. But to have freedom, one needs to know why one suffers and how to eliminate or alleviate that suffering. And that knowledge and the application of that knowledge requires discipline. Again, not the cold, hard discipline, and not lethargic, excuse-based discipline, but compassionate, honest discipline. The kind that is self-motivated and the kind that is acted upon. So what are your thoughts, questions, ideas? Yes, Alicia.
Well, you were talking about not making promises to yourself that you can't keep. And I think so often we do that in a way of self-sabotaging, because if we don't hold ourselves accountable to things we can't keep, then what are we going to have to beat ourselves up about? And I don't know if that's like a conditioned thing by society or if it's just a subjective thing, but that is just something that came to me as you were talking.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I remember when I was little kid, you know, I used to love watching like Casper the Friendly Ghost and Popeye with olive oil. Yeah. And I just kind of had this impression in my mind that they were fun cartoons, you know, and that they weren't like today's cartoons that really have a lot of violence in them. And then yesterday I'm sitting with my grandchildren and we're Michelle's laughing. We're watching Casper and Popeye. The old ones that I watched as a kid. And I'm sitting here going, what? There's so much violence. And so much demeaning. Poor Olive Oil. You know? She's just like weak and frail and, you know, needs... Doesn't get to make up her own mind. Right? She's constantly being kidnapped by Bluto. Yeah. Bluto. You know? And saved by Popeye. Yeah. And poor Casper. He's such the subject of bullying. Now, okay, granted, in the end, he typically makes friends with everybody, but still, he goes through so much. Yeah. So we are enculturated in ways we can't even remember, you know, because that is not the way that I remembered those cartoons. But the subtle impression of those cartoons must still be in my mind.
I had the same thing with Shirley Temple movies.
Absolutely.
So when my kids were, I thought, oh, they would love these Shirley Temple movies, and I was, whoa, that's racist, and demeaning.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And it's all coming out of the mouth of a 9-year-old. I mean, and we wonder why kids today, why they talk the way they talk, and sometimes they don't have much respect. Look at what they're looking at. It's the same thing that we looked at. So if we're looking at our children and wondering why they tend to not have much respect, we must also look at ourselves and wonder why we don't. Oh, but I do have respect. Maybe some of the time. But I pretty much guarantee you it is not all the time. No. We've learned, we've been enculturated in a much different way. We've been enculturated to put more value to violence and less value to passive peace. To put more value to proving our point and knocking down the other guy or girl versus community, collaboration, and unity. That's very devalued in society. Yeah. So, yeah, no, go ahead.
I notice that a lot, like with body image and food too. Like you go on this strict diet, right? But then you have a bad day, so you eat maybe like 3 brownies that you probably shouldn't have had. And then it's like you are conditioned almost to start noticing everything. Like, ew, look at that dimple. Ew, look at this. Ew, look at that.
Yeah.
Because that's like what you've been bombarded with your whole life.
Yeah.
But quickly give up on that diet, and then
Right.
you start binge eating all those
Exactly.
brownies before you know it, then you're more depressed.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
Like if you start following people who are into body positivity or that whole, genre, it's interesting how that shifts. Because when you're able to sit there and be like, you know what, you deserve those brownies today. Good job. We'll get back on the horse tomorrow. It changes everything.
Yeah.
But we're just taught that we have to be so rigid with things we need for ourselves, really.
Yeah. And I would say there's one more change that needs to be made there. And that would be stop using the word deserve. Because you don't deserve the brownies. And you don't not deserve them either. You haven't done anything to earn the brownies. But you haven't done anything to not earn them either. So it's not a matter of deserve. It is a matter of choice. And it is a matter of choice. I am choosing to have the brownie. I am choosing to have the coffee. I am choosing to have the chocolate cake. And I'm choosing knowingly that my body in this moment can either handle it, and my psyche can handle it, or it can't. And if it can, whatever. And if it can't, hold enough space to hold those emotions in a loving nurturance, in a loving hug, and remind yourself, it is not written anywhere in the universe that I must be a size 2. I'm 6 foot tall. And several years ago, I used to do some modeling. And at that point in time, I was a size 2'4". I'm 6 foot tall. And I'm a big bone girl. And at that point in time, I was a size 2'4". And my weight has always fluctuated from a size 2'4" to a 16, 18. I don't really care anymore it's like. I'm where I am. And if I feel healthy, I feel healthy. And if I don't feel healthy, then I need to change something. But it doesn't necessarily mean I need to change my weight. It means I need to change my mind. And I need to change my discipline about how I'm treating my health and my wellness. When I was in India, I was very thin also. And I was having a conversation with one of Swamiji's devotees. And she said to me, she kind of pinched me. She said, "Where's your fat?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, it's here somewhere." And she said, "You women," she very much was stereotypical, but she wasn't wrong either. She said, "You women in the United States, you go to all kinds of efforts to not have fat on your body. Don't you know that when you reach a certain age, you're supposed to?" And I looked at her, and I was a little perplexed initially, like 2 seconds. And then I went, oh my God, that's right. At a certain age, you're supposed to change. After you have children, you're supposed to change. As you get older, you're supposed to change. If you eat a lot, you're supposed to change. If you don't eat a lot, you're supposed to change. If you're not changing, then there's something wrong. Now, why, when we get older, are we supposed to put a little more weight on? Well, particularly for women, Nature's got us protected. As women get older, they have a tendency to have weaker bones. And a little bit more weight on the bones, not a lot more weight, but a little bit more weight on the bones causes bone degeneration if that is an active person. Because the ligamentous attachments tug on the bone and cause osteoblastic activity, which is the regeneration of bone cells. Additionally, when a woman has a little bit more weight on her, not a lot more weight, but as she gets older, when her bones are more frail, if she falls, she has a little bit more cushion to protect her. I mean, like, there's all kinds of really practical reasons. People are like, that's too freaking simple. No way. No, really, think about it. You know? Why do boxers wear face masks? To protect themselves from being hit, right? Well, you can look at your hips getting a little bit wider as a bit of a protection in the body that you don't quite understand why it's there, and you may like it or you may not like it, but it's got a reason for being there. There is weight gain that is unnecessary. Of course there is. But, you know, it's what it is. And part of the discipline is looking at it truthfully, honestly, making the changes in place, putting the changes in place that need to be made, and then doing the best that you can with them, and learning along the way, and recognizing that we don't have all the answers for everything. We don't. You know, and maybe if we're a little more patient with ourselves, if we're a little bit more compassionate with ourselves, not by way of making excuses, but by way of being honest with oneself, then maybe that'll open us up to making some more changes. But hey, maybe we don't need to make a lot more changes right now. Maybe we're in the midst of learning in life right now. You're the only one who knows. You're the only one who knows. And your meter is your level of suffering. So if you're a generally happy person right now, and you're pretty cool with the way things are going, and things slide off your back pretty easily, and you know, you've got a positive outlook, and you're supportive of your community, and you're not, you know, filled with a lot of emotions that are all jumbled up, maybe you don't need so many changes in life right now. But if you're generally unhappy, and if your emotions are generally in turmoil, and you generally don't feel well about yourself, then maybe look at little things that you can change. How can you uplift yourself? Practice more. Breathe more. Meditate more. Eat more salad. Drink more water, coconut water. It's good for you. Take a supplement, you know. But look for the root cause of what's causing the suffering, so that you know where it's coming from, and start working with it a little bit at a time. Disciplined. That's what the path is. The path isn't, I'm just going to step right here and now it's done. The path is a path. It goes somewhere, typically up craggy hills and down into the valleys and through the swamps and all kinds of crazy places. And you're the one walking that path, so you got to meet whatever comes to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And the discipline is in the walking. Yeah. So Dayananda's going to come on up here, and he's going to lead us in some kirtan. And for those of you who are staying, we're all going to chant together. And for those of you who are not staying, then you can make your way quietly whenever you need to. And as Dayananda's getting set up, any last comments or questions? We're good? Are we good? Okay, good. So I'm going to close off this conversation now. Om Namah Shivaya, Jai Ma, peace to all.